Just waiting for Jonathan to connect at his end, and then we can start. So thanks everybody for your patience. Hello, Jonathan.
Here we are.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Okay, so let's start with this. I'm really looking forward to it, as I mentioned to you yesterday. So everybody, welcome Jonathan Ilori. Some of you may not know, Jonathan is the club's top triple jumper, having jumped 16.28 in the last couple of years. And in fact, Jonathan, you jumped 16.09 indoors before this whole COVID lockdown started. So just tell us a little bit about, you know, how you approached the indoor season, and then what your thoughts have been since the COVID-19 lockdown, and how you've been coping with it.
Well, the indoor, actually, it was quite interesting. Obviously, I moved to Birmingham at the end of last season, and
Yes.
I discussed with my new coach, Aston, whether we're going to do an indoor season. In the end, we decided to do it, which I think for me it was important to break up the training.
Yes.
And physically, I felt in great shape. Technically, I learned a lot, and I think for me, it was just about trying to replicate what I was doing in training
Sure.
in a pressure situation. So yeah, it was going quite well. I guess the trouble for me is fouling. I don't know if the people watching have watched me jump, but I tend to foul a lot. And that happened in the first competition here in Birmingham. But I was jumping very well. And then went to Austria, and the same thing happened. Round one was really big. I got super excited after that. But yeah, it was a foul, and that's part of triple jumping.
Yes.
So I went into British Champs full of confidence. You know, it was a fairly open competition in terms of who was there, and I felt pretty confident, to be honest, of winning gold. So I wasn't going to hold back.
Right.
But in the end, I finished fourth. I jumped over 16, which is obviously the first time indoor, so I have to be pleased with that. But yeah, I think I was on a sort of an upwards trend, and looking forward to the outdoor season. Was actually going to head to the US for training camp. It was actually lucky that I didn't book the flights, because I think I was going to book it almost like the week that this whole thing happened. But I didn't actually do it. So yeah, it was a shame that, you know, I couldn't build on the indoor season, because I was very excited for the outdoor. I think indoor for me, I never jump well indoor. But to jump 16, it showed, and to have sort of those bigger jumps, even though they were fouls, showed me that outdoors was going to be quite spectacular.
But it was quite close, wasn't it? I seem to remember. I mean, you jumped the same as the person in third. Is that right?
No, it was. I'm trying to even remember what. It's a good thing I don't remember what I jumped, because I shouldn't remember fourth place. I think it was just over 16. It may have been
16.08. I think it was.
But yeah, it was really close. There was, I want to say, maybe 15 or so centimeters between myself and first place.
Yes.
I didn't hit the board, which was the tough part, because the board will give you, you know, a good 15 to 20 centimeters. So if I did, maybe there'd be a medal sitting in front of me. But that's the sport.
Of course, and I'm sure there'll be more to come. So.
I just lost you for a second.
How have you been coping? Yeah, I lost you. How have you been coping with the lockdown? What sort of training have you been doing, and how's that been going?
I mean, to be honest, it hasn't. I mean, it's obviously a big difference not being able to train at a track, and not having, say, a weight room for sure is a big adjustment. But I've been training quite well. I actually feel in really good shape. I guess because in terms of, you're limited by space, so everything I've been doing has been quite sharp. So I actually feel pretty quick. I have these benches outside my apartment, and I've almost turned those into plyo boxes. So I am keeping up with the reactivity, which is really important. That's the key to the triple jump, is being reactive. For me, I don't see the need to go ahead and start doing all these general strength general circuits and things like that. That
Yeah.
sort of stuff we've done in the
Yes.
winter. So I should physically be in shape. So I just continued doing the same sharp, quick stuff that we had been doing.
Yes.
At the end of the day, triple jump is an explosive event. It doesn't make sense to me to go on a 5-mile run and then go do a circuit for 40 minutes. It's a lot of explosive exercises. So yeah, I feel pretty good. I guess the harder part is not having a weight room. I'm hoping that, yeah, at some point, obviously, I'll be able to replicate that in some way. But yeah, I've been keeping on top of core. That's really important for a triple jumper, to have a strong core, flexibility, ankle strength, doing things that perhaps get neglected in the season. So yeah, it's okay. It's tough not seeing my training partners.
Yeah, of course, I'm sure it must be. Yes.
That they've sort of, because I'm new to this city, they've sort of become my family here. And so, yeah, it's tough not seeing them day in, day out, because we spend a long time at the track. So yeah, and obviously not seeing Aston, you know, we Skype and things, but yeah, I do miss that sort of face-to-face interaction and the conversations we have in the gym and stuff. And,
of course.
But yeah, in terms of keeping on top of training, yeah, I have been doing a good job. I'd say recently it's been quite tough in terms of, admittedly, motivation, because when we found out that there's not going to be a European Championships this year, that was tough to take. And then looking at the schedule and British champs, you know, unsure if it's going to happen. So all of these things, all this uncertainty can sometimes make motivation hard.
Yes, of course.
Because for me, you know, I'm in the sport to compete at championships.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I am keeping on top of it. Obviously, taking the time to, you know, have some downtime too.
Yes.
Eating what I want, perhaps, and just taking the time to relax. You're rarely going to get a season like this.
Of course, yeah. Let's hope not. Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah, exactly. So, might as well just enjoy the downtime.
Yes, yes. So, just tell us a bit about you know, your move to Birmingham and to be coached by Aston Moore. And for those who don't know, Aston himself was a very good sort of GB triple jumper. So, how important is it to have a coach who actually understands what you're doing and how you're training, who actually understands your event, you know, to that level of detail?
Yeah, no, it's massive. You know, it's really cool training in this group. It's a high level group.
Yes.
I look around me and all these athletes have competed internationally. So, yeah, it's great not only having the training partners, but yes, Aston, he's taught me and teaching me a lot of things.
Right.
And there's a lot for me to process. And I think that's what we were using this year for, is to sort of learn, relearn some things. But yeah, it's been a big step up, certainly in terms of volume, the amount of hours I'm spending training, and for sure the information I have to process. A couple of the cues are different. I also, you know, had a brilliant coach in John Shepherd in London, and yeah, things were going great. And as you know, seen in recent years, I was jumping very well.
Yes.
But you know, for me, a lot happened last year. A lot changed, and I think it was time for me to make a change myself. It reached that point where I had to decide, where do I want to take, you know, my career. And you know, I'm fortunate to be flexible in terms of where I can move. I was going to look at Paris. I was going to train in France. I was also looking at returning to the US. So yeah, I was looking everywhere. This was a really big decision, and I wanted to get it right. And in the end, almost by chance, so my coach at the time, John, he couldn't be at the last British League in Birmingham. And so I text Femi, who was my England athletics mentor at the time, and said, hey, do you think Aston will be able to help me, since he's based in Birmingham? And he said, yeah, sure, happy to help you on the day. And it went great. It was almost like you rarely get a test run with a coach. It went really well. And, you know, I came back to London that weekend and thought about it, and was actually, even though, you know, I speak French and I've been to the US and lived there before.
And we'll
It
talk a
would
bit
have
more
been.
about that. Yes.
Pardon?
I said we'll talk a bit more about it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It would have been a cultural shock, though, for me
Yes.
to go to live in Paris or to go back to America. It would have taken a year for me to figure out. I mean, it's a cultural shock being in Birmingham. It's different to London.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, last year, you know, a lot happened personally in my life and also in my career.
Yes.
And it wasn't the year that I was expecting. You know, yeah, I jumped 16-20 and I think 5th or 6th at British Champs, but that wasn't the aim for last season.
Right.
In my eyes, it was a bad year. And
Yes.
it wasn't like a knee-jerk reaction, but something needed to change.
Okay.
I love London. You know, people
Yes.
know me say, you know, I really love London. But you know, I don't know if London perhaps for me was the best place to pursue my professional career.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot going on in the city.
Yes.
I have a lot of friends there, a lot of friends outside of track and field too. And even like in terms of location, you got weight room here, track here, physio somewhere else.
Yes.
So a lot of traveling and a lot of time wasted. So yeah, it was important for me to be in an environment where everything is centralized again.
Of course.
So,
but
yeah,
of course, you know, you know, you're at that stage in your career where you have to make these big decisions, and you have to, you know, decide what's best for you, what's best for you physically, mentally, you know, geographically, you know, with regards to who's coaching you, what group you're in. You know, these are all very important decisions. And of course, you know, being a senior, you know, international athlete, if you make the wrong decision, you know, that could be a whole season, you know, kind of wiped out if it doesn't quite work. But let's just let's just go back to your junior and young athlete career. When did it all kind of start for you? When did you suddenly think to yourself, well, actually, I'm actually pretty good at this. You know, I can, you know, start to compete and compete well. How did it?
It's like that. I don't know. Did you just lose me for a minute?
Just for about 2 seconds. So that's
Okay,
fine.
so I was saying I competed at sports day and things, and yeah, I was good at triple jump, 200 various events.
Yeah.
But in terms of when I realized that this is something that I can perhaps take to the next level, it wasn't until maybe like second year under 17, first year under 20.
Okay.
It was, I guess you'd call it relatively late. I went to a boarding school. I was playing a lot of different sports. Rugby was the main sport, but we also had to play hockey. I avoided cricket by doing athletics.
Okay.
But it was a school where we had a lot of things going on. So for me, really, for a long time, athletics was just another thing that I did. It wasn't like, okay, I'm just a triple jumper.
So you were a typical sort of teenager doing multiple sports. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, music, drama, everything. And that was really important to me, just have a bit more of a holistic experience at school.
Sure.
But it wasn't until top year under 17, put me under 20 that I realized that this is something that I could take to the next level.
Because I remember
I wasn't the best junior.
Yeah. I remember speaking to you a couple of years ago, and you said, "Oh, you know, I didn't win any medals at English schools, you know, in under 17 level, but clearly you were a good jumper. You jumped over 14 meters." But obviously you were up against a lot of other good athletes. It was just you were unlucky, I suppose, in the year that you went through as a second year under 17, which does happen.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, you had an interesting observation yesterday. You know, and you mentioned the number of athletes who actually have then gone through the junior and senior ranks and who are still competing. So just to mention that as an aside, so that people understand what happens as juniors sort of transition through the sport. Because you mentioned the number of people who are still competing.
Yeah, no, it's, and I think almost it's a good thing that I wasn't taking it so seriously at the time, because mentally and physically, I wasn't burnt out by the time I was a top under 20 and going into under 23 age group. But yeah, you look back at the rankings, and you know some of these guys are still friends, so they might even be watching. So absolutely no disrespect to them, but I'm the only one left almost. I think one year it's literally me and Ben that's the ones left.
Yes, so that's Ben Williams.
Yeah, and I look back at when I was under 17. Yeah, you look at the top 8 English schools, 2009 must have been. I don't think there's anybody left apart from me. And you know it's all about senior medals. Great, you know, winning English schools is a fantastic achievement. Winning a medal there is a fantastic achievement, even qualifying. But I wasn't so hung up about it. There were no tears. I knew that I'd get there eventually, and I did. And the most important medal for me is the one sitting in front, which is the senior medals.
Yes. So you went on from there. You said you jumped 3 meters in under 17. You went on. You had quite a good couple of years as a junior. You were ranked #1 as an under 20. So tell us a bit more about that period, and then we'll talk about what happened after that.
So second year under 20, I think I was a bit unlucky because I was in a really competitive training group where I think that 2010 under 20s, of the top 8, I think maybe 6 or 7 came from our training group at Certain. And maybe any other year I would have got a medal. In the end, I missed out to one of my best friends, Nana, by like, I think it was 4 centimeters.
Right.
That was probably the last time he beat me, but that stung a bit. But yeah, third year under 20. That was actually my first year in America. So I came back physically in a different kind of shape, had a lot of speed behind me, and obviously linked up with Cream Street Thompson. And yeah, I won that championship with relative ease. For me, it was all about trying to qualify for World Juniors, which I didn't at the time. But under 20, the latter part under 20 career went really well. But that's why I started to devote more time into the sport.
Yes. So let's just, you mentioned the US. Just talk to us a bit about that, your experience there in the US, and also how you think it differs from the UK system. I mean, there's some obvious things, but if you could tell us a bit more about that, that would be interesting, I think, for everybody.
So, yeah, so in our training group, I mean, our coach, John Vernon, he himself studied in the US, and he was a big advocate that as junior athletes, we should look to the States. And I'm really glad that I did it. In the end, I went on a school trip a couple of years before I decided, and perhaps that was the catalyst. But in the end, I'm really glad that I went. It was on and off the track. It was a fantastic experience. Certainly, athletically, if we just take that piece, it's a whole different world. Right. Literally, like being a professional athlete. Some of the things we had access to, I'd never seen in my life. So much money being thrown at sport. Our football stadium held 75,000. And I remember I'd actually been to like an American football game here in Birmingham before I went to America. It was Birmingham against Nottingham, and it was billed as the biggest American football game in the UK. And I think there were like 4,000 people. Okay. And I went to the US, and I was like, yeah, there's this crazy game in the UK where there's 4,000 people attending. I was looking like, that's nothing. Yeah. 70 plus thousand people were out there supporting Mizzou, and yeah, it was a really fun experience athletically. Competition wise is where I learned had the biggest lessons. Yes. Because you go from jumping against guys who are at perhaps 15-50 odd to now jumping against guys who are going 17. Right. Rubbing shoulders with people that would make future world championships, Olympic games. So that's where I learned the biggest lessons is competing. Yes. I think there's a misconception that they compete you too much in America. In my eyes, I think you learn to compete in America. You learn how to compete. And I think that's something that we can all learn a bit from in terms of the way the Americans approach track and field, is that they're very competitive. They don't care who's in front of them. They're ready to take you down. And I adopted a little bit of that mentality. um,
Okay.
and as a result, gained a lot of confidence. So
Sure.
yeah, America was fantastic. It was tough. Physically at the beginning, I wasn't used to training 5 days a week. Some of those days you can call it a double day if you add lifting in. So I wasn't
Right.
used to that. So it was really tough. But I think I'm better off for it. Obviously, I'm still competing today. So
Yes. Yes.
I don't always agree with the notion that you go to America and get burnt out, because it's just about picking the right university and the right coach.
Okay.
Um, it was a 4-year degree, so academically it was a bit different. But yeah, on and off the track, a fantastic experience.
Yes. So you would say it was a positive and beneficial experience for you.
Yeah, as you get with sport, there's going to be negative experiences. Whether you're in the UK or the US, you're going to have negative experiences. There were bad competitions.
Yes.
I had knee surgery out there, which is one of the toughest phases of my life.
Yeah.
After year 2, my coach at the time, he'd moved on to a different university, and then I had a new coach for the last 2 years. And if I'm very honest, I didn't have a fantastic relationship with him,
Okay.
with the second coach, I mean. And
Right.
so, yeah, it was quite tough. You know, there were tough times, but I think you get that anywhere.
Yes.
It's not going to be perfect. It's not all daisies all the time. It's going to be, yeah, brutal at times, but I think that's just high level sport. And I had the option of, yeah, staying there and pursuing an athletics career there. But I think in the end, coming back here was the better option for me.
Okay. So tell us a bit about the injury and what, how you coped with that and what you had to do to kind of, recover and get better.
So I had knee surgery, I had a meniscus tear, and it actually happened months before. I
Right.
think we were sprinting, and I put on the brakes a bit too quick, and
Mm.
yeah, had a bit of a rough knee for the season. And when we went into the off season, we had to have physicals, and we were playing around my knee, and like something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Had an MRI, and it came back and said you have a meniscus tear. And as another big pro going to the US is that medically you're taken care of.
Yes,
So
I was going to say. Yeah.
the time between MRI and surgery was literally a week.
Mm.
So things were pushed through very, very quickly. And in terms of rehab, that was quite aggressive. And I'm thankful that it was, because the season after that in 2014 was my breakthrough year, where I
Yes.
jumped 16 from a 10-step approach and
Yeah.
1589 win legal. So yeah, surgery was tough.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the last surgery.
No. No.
But that knee surgery is really tough. I'm never going to sugarcoat that.
Yes.
To anyone watching, don't get banged up knees, because
Yes.
that experience was really difficult to get through. There were some dark days.
Mm.
And I think the hardest thing for me is not knowing when it ends.
Yeah.
There were days that I go to sleep just wishing that we could fast forward time to when I had a fixed knee. But I got through it, and I'm a lot stronger for it.
Good. Good. So just you mentioned 2014. That was your breakthrough year. What do you think actually went well that year, and why did it happen? Do you think?
I mean, I think because I had knee surgery, there was less pressure going into that season.
Okay.
Almost like no expectation,
Mm.
which was a good thing. I remember we had the SEC Conference Championships, indoor championships, at the end of Feb, and a reporter for a newspaper called me up and said, "Hey, Jonathan, we just want to do an interview before the championship." And I was just giving them smack talk, like, "Yeah, I'm the beast everyone should be scared of. I'm going to go in there and wreck the party." And I could say these things because I was literally like, there's no pressure for me. Literally no fear at all. No one's expecting me to do anything. And I went in and PB'd and got bronze. And I sort of carry that same mentality throughout the rest of the year.
Okay.
What was hard was that I'd missed a lot of base training. So it was difficult for me to recover from competitions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I did compete, it was really, really good. The most interesting part about that season is that I went from a short approach, so from a 10-step run-up, when my run-up would typically be 18 steps. And yeah, that was we didn't expect to go 16 from a 10 step, but I did. And that to me, it showed me what I could truly be capable of in this sport, and gave me a lot of confidence moving forward.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just sort of one thing led to another, and then yeah, that was a real breakthrough year for me.
Yes. So just thinking about the whole kind of psychology of triple jumping, or, just generally the psychology of competing, what do you kind of think about when you're, standing on the runway about to jump? If you've seen somebody else jump quite a long distance, how does your brain and body respond to that? What do you kind of tell yourself you need to do?
Well, I've done it so many times. So things are quite automatic.
Yeah.
I'd say the things that might change, obviously, weather, it might be a bit more windy. Perhaps I'll get the crowd clapping. These are the things that can change. Now, the things that are fixed is that I'm always going to line my foot up, stare down the runway. I try not to give myself too many cues, too many things to think about technically, because in a competition, it should just be about competing.
Yeah.
That's not the time to be thinking about, oh, this. And to be honest, it happens so fast that you can't process that anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the main thing I focus on is where my foot is in comparison to the marker, whether I move it back, move it forward, whatever my coach has told me, whatever I'm feeling at that time.
Yeah.
That's the main thing I'm thinking about, because that's my biggest issue, is managing the level of arousal. Sometimes I can get too hyped and won't move my run up back enough, and that means I'll foul.
Sure.
Or I change the run up too much. I push too hard in the first steps instead of keeping it consistent. So I'd say I think about the start more so now. And for me, if the start is consistent, everything else should be the same as well. But yeah, I love getting the crowd engaged.
That's one thing I was going to actually ask you. Where do you stand on that? Because obviously a lot of people say, yes, you should get yourself, kind of G'd up. You should do the whole kind of clapping thing at the start before you jump. Others say, no, you need to keep yourself calm. So, it's a different school of thought, isn't it, as to what you should do? How does it work? What's good, what's bad?
I guess it depends on the competition. I think, and it depends on the athlete, to be honest. Because you see that in a lot of sports. You got more introverted characters, more extroverted characters. And I think for me, I feed off the energy of the crowd. A lot of my biggest jumps will come at a championship because I love that environment. But though, there are times where I just want some quiet. I just want to come down the runway and just go through the motions of a jump. Or maybe I'm in trouble. I fouled the first two jumps.
Yes, yeah.
It doesn't make sense to get the crowd clapping on the third
No.
round. So, I believe, get the crowd involved. At the end of the day, sport is entertainment.
Yeah.
The people have paid good money to come watch you jump, watch you run, entertain them.
Yeah.
Be a character if it's who you are. But certainly, get them engaged. Because I've watched competitions and sat there, a little bit bored at times. And I want someone to do something. I want some action, something exciting. So I love getting the crowd involved. I'll usually do it in round one, to be honest.
Yes.
I'm not afraid of getting the crowd clapping in round one.
So just thinking about that then, from the perspective of, the kind of entertainment angle, and who are your idols in the sport, in athletics, in sport generally, and why are those people your idols? What's kind of drawn you towards them?
It's hard to say that I have. It might sound weird, but a real idol in the triple jump. I've tried not to idolize too many, because I've understood that eventually I'm going to be competing against these guys, and I can't be sitting there next to Nathan Douglas. Hey Nathan, can I just take your autograph for this next jump? I've got to be there to do a job. And so, but obviously growing up, I used to watch Nathan Phillips battle it out, and that was awesome. That was exciting. But I'd probably say one of my biggest sporting idols is Rafael Nadal. I say that because, this guy's, I think, tougher than anybody in terms of managing injuries.
Yes.
That's where I've learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
in terms of how meticulous he is in his approach to even, the space between his water bottles, literally everything. He's so precise.
Yes.
And I really like that about him.
Okay.
Obviously, there are fantastic performers in athletics, and the usual suspects, Usain Bolt and so
Yeah.
forth. But I'd say there isn't really like a track and field idol for me. I take more inspiration from other sports, but certainly Nadal.
Yeah.
And in my career, I've had some pretty bad injuries.
Yes. So tell us a bit more about that, because obviously that's a key part of what makes you a good athlete, is how you recover from those bad times. It's not just about an endless kind of procession of medals and things. There are negative times you need to go through. So tell us a bit more about what's happened a bit more recently.
So, I mean, it goes back to my time in the US. 2015, the indoor season, well, going into 2015, we had big hopes for the season. We trained super hard that winter. I think physically that has to be maybe the best shape I've ever been in. Doing scary things in the weight room and on the track. And I was ready to go. We sort of trained through the indoor season, and we had high hopes for the outdoor. That was the World Championship year. And I sat down with the coach at Missouri, and looking at the fact that I jumped 16 from 10 steps the year before, the aim was very much to qualify for Worlds.
Yeah.
Now, between indoor and outdoor, we got like a week break. And something that was common in America was that we played basketball at the student rec center. And just one Friday after class, as we did a fair few times, we went to play basketball. And we played like 4 games, absolutely fine, nothing wrong with me. And then the 5th game, there was a loose ball. And usually in the rec, you shouldn't be playing that hard. But this game, we were playing fairly hard. And I put my arm out to get the ball. It was on the ground. And I just hit the deck.
Yeah.
And immediately, it's almost like an empty water bottle sound. And you just heard everyone go, ooh. And when you fall over or something happens, there's a little bit of shock. I didn't know. I knew something was wrong. I didn't quite know what. I got up and my shoulder was just off. You could see it. There was something wrong.
Okay.
And I immediately, I was like, I've dislocated it. I knew I dislocated it. So I sat down, called the team doctor, and went to see them, and had an MRI and explained that, I had a dislocated shoulder and this and that. And that was tough because we trained really hard going into that year, and I almost wrecked it in an instant, doing something that really shouldn't have been doing. Easily could have been avoided. And then, we decided not to have surgery on it. We rehab for the rest of the season. I jumped 16 a few months later, which was a shock because I couldn't even lift my arm for a good few weeks. And the fact that I jumped 16 that year, it showed me that, I was capable of something really special had I not got injured.
Okay. Yes.
So that was in 2015. I came back to the UK end of 2015 and, just carried on training and things. 2016 didn't go so well. And in July of that year, I actually pretty much quit.
Right.
I remember I texted my group of friends and I was like, guys, I'm done. I'm done with this because it just wasn't going well. I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
And it's like the energy was just, and the fun was just sucked out of the sport for me anyway. And I started playing rugby, and like I was playing American football and things, and just trying to be just like a regular person.
Yes.
And I got just like a regular job in the city in London, and it was enjoyable to a point. But I did realize that, it's probably not for me.
Yes.
Now, here's where I guess injury-wise, remember that obviously the shoulder hadn't been operated on yet. I was playing American football in the park.
Right.
Someone threw a pass. I was sprinting as fast as I could. I caught it. As soon as I caught it, I hit the rugby post, smack, bang. And it didn't have a padding on it. And honestly, that was probably the most painful thing I've experienced.
Yeah.
That night I was actually shaking. And yeah, I think it's strangely enough, that was the catalyst for me to get back on the horse in terms of track and field, but also have surgery.
Yes.
2017, that's just sort of, I delayed the surgery a little bit, but I was training again. And then at the end of that year, I had reconstructive surgery to fix that shoulder.
Yes.
So effectively from 2015 to 2017, they weren't my best years, and I wasn't very open about it. I didn't really tell anyone why, but I was effectively competing with one arm.
Yeah.
And it can have a big effect on everything else that you're doing. I pulled a hamstring.
The whole coordination and balance.
Yeah. And there were so many other things that came as a result of me only having one shoulder. So yeah, that was you sort of look at my results, and up until 2014, it was going really well.
Yeah.
And people wonder what happened. And I know people think, oh, he went to America and just got burnt out.
Yes.
I literally
that's not the case.
I fell playing basketball and then hurt it again. So yeah, reconstructing my shoulder, and going into 2018 again, I didn't have massive expectation, but I was still like, you know what, just go for it and see what happened. And that was the turning point for me. And that's where you've seen obviously better results.
Yes, yeah.
That mentally and physically, I have a new approach to this sport. I think I've matured a lot. I like playing a lot of different sports. I can get easily distracted by these sports. Yeah.
Probably best not to play American football, though.
No. I mean, I think I took things too far at that point. But yeah, that's what happened in terms of injury. And the shoulder's fixed now. I've got anchors holding it together, but I can pretty much do most things in the gym, and obviously jumping fine. So yeah, that's is part of the sport. But for me,
that's a positive story. That's a really positive story, because it shows you can come out of those really dark times and actually, you can actually gain, benefit from it. It makes, clearly in your case, it's actually made you a more focused and stronger athlete because of that experience. Yeah, so what are you looking forward to now? Hopefully, let's say, everything finalizes, after COVID-19, you're able to would you do something this year, do you think? What's your kind of aim for 2020? What are you thinking?
It's a weird one, because if I'm honest, I feel ready to compete right now. Yes. I don't think that I've really skipped a beat, and that's just how I've been training. Yeah. You don't know how this virus is going to evolve, so we don't know when the next competition is going to be. I wouldn't like to open up at British Champs, and that's scheduled for the beginning of August. Yeah. I don't think that's going to be a good thing for me to just have one competition. No. Obviously, I have to think about, there's Euro indoors and World indoors, next year. Yeah. And I can still get the qualification for those championships. Okay. So there is that, but it's a conversation. Every time I speak to Aston, I ask him, what do you think? And we just have to see how it evolves. I'm going to stay ready to compete. Yeah. But if I can't get at least 3 or 4 in, I probably won't, because I'm not going to get much out of it. Even if I feel great, it still takes a couple competitions just to get into the groove. Yes. So yeah, the plan for this year is just to sort of stay in shape, see what happens. If I don't compete, that's fine. On to next year. And really, the Olympics being in 2021, it's just another year for me to train. It's another year for, and that's why I'm not going to rush to compete, because if it means that I can just sort of work on some other things in preparation for next year, I think I'm in a much better spot. Long term, obviously, the goal is 2022 Commonwealth Games here.
Yes, right in your home city.
Yeah, my adopted home city. Yeah, so it's funny. There's like a clock in the center of the city, right by the library. I walk past it quite often, and it's a reminder of what the goal is. And absolutely, the
Yes.
goal is to win gold at that championship. So
Well, that's
I'm really looking forward to that.
yes.
But certainly
Brilliant.
this year we just got to stay in shape and see
Yes.
what happens.
Yes. And would that be your advice to anybody? Just keep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just stay in shape. Take the time to have some downtime as well.
Yes.
Don't get injured.
That's
Now's
quite
the time to get injured. You shouldn't be getting injured. No competitions. No one's on the track. So, but also work on the things that have been neglected.
yeah.
I think for me, my ankle and Achilles strength, that's one thing I've been working really hard on, and the core
Yeah.
stability. I think you have a good jump session or sprint session, whatever it may be, and you just sort of hop off the track and cool down and go home. You forget to do these smaller exercises. So
Yes.
that's what I've given more time to.
Good.
But what I chat with Aston about quite depth is rushing to compete. Got to remember that when you're competing indoor, even outdoor, you've prepared the body to compete. You've been in spikes and the necessary exercise to do that.
Yeah.
You can't rush back to compete, even though mentally you might feel ready to. Your joints might not be ready for you to compete. So take time with it. Even when it's the first day on the track, I know it's exciting, like you feel like a kid in a candy store, but don't rush to do everything. Otherwise, you're just going to rush towards an injury.
Yeah, of course. No, that's really good. That's some really good tips. And I think everybody in the club is looking forward to seeing you compete again. And hopefully, we'll be supporting you through the indoors and the outdoor season and the Commonwealth Games.
No, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to putting the club vest on. Every time I put it on, I jump well. So
yes,
it's one of my favorite vests.
that's your lucky vest. Your lucky vest. Yeah, not just the England international vest, but the Blackheath vest is your lucky vest. No, that's good. Exactly. And that is a very positive note to finish on.
Yeah.
And it's been really good talking to you. Really good, for everybody to hear, what you're doing, what's motivating you, and what your aims are. So, as I said, we're all supporting you. So thank you for sharing this time and telling us what you're doing. So
I appreciate it. Cool.
We'll be in touch again soon, I'm sure. So keep well, keep safe. Thanks again.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.